World of Warcraft's Midnight expansion is here. Well, it's been out over a month. I went in solo with almost zero expectations, and somehow ended up absorbed in the endgame loop pushing Mythic Plus dungeons, and even guild raiding for the first time in 17 years. That alone should give you an idea of how things have been going. But there are definitely issues here as well. I've got some criticisms with the story and the overall Warcraft feel. You know the deal, it's modern World of Warcraft, it's less about the journey, the real game starts at Endgame. It leans heavily into that familiar endgame loop, replaying the same content at escalating difficulty tiers, chasing marginal upgrades and bigger numbers. If you like the previous expansion, the War Within, then you're probably gonna like Midnight.
This bodes well.
Personally, I'd argue that Midnight is a bit stronger across the board with the unique selling point of player housing, adding a whole new layer to the core game, if that's your kind of thing. That said, this is easily one of the most technically unstable expansions I've played. Bugs, mini crashes, and these forced reloads that rip you out of the experience. It wears thin pretty quickly.
Please.
Burning Crusade is my absolute favourite era, so getting to revisit Eversong Woods and Silvermoon City has hit me with a wave of nostalgia I wasn't ready for. And honestly, these might be the best looking zones WoW has ever had. I'm excited to see future revamps of older zones. I also looked up, my Unholy Death Knight is in a fantastic spot. It basically plays like a necromancer now, flooding the screen with undead minions, and it's been consistently satisfying. There's an abundance of things to unpack here.
So richly abundant!
We'll get into the story, leveling up experience, Demon Hunter Devourer specialization, and the full spread of endgame with delves, dungeons, and raids. Maybe rank some of my personal favourites. There's also the surprisingly sinister prey system.
Kill for me, now!
And of course the big one, player housing. Let's get into Midnight. Midnight drops you straight into a full-scale battle between the forces of Light and the Void. Xalatav returns from the War Within, now unleashing the Void on the Isle of Quel'Danas in an attempt to seize the Sunwell. It's a new era for Warcraft. This isn't really Horde versus Alliance anymore. They're fighting side by side with elves, priests and paladins leading the charge for the Light.
For the light!
Okay, I'm going to keep it very light on the story. Basically, in the first 30 minutes we push the Void back with the forces of Light stabilising the Sunwell into this radiant beacon. Visually it looks incredible, the light piercing through the void, illuminating the sky across the entire world. World design is top notch. This is where Midnight really opens up. You start this massive new bridge leading into Silvermoon City, and Blizzard just let the visuals speak for themselves. This modern take on the Blood Elf capital is absolutely jaw-dropping, the attention to detail is incredible, and the clash of light and void in the backdrop is just the icing on the cake.
Another miracle.
That said, I couldn't help but feel a little bit underwhelmed by the void itself. Remember the demonic Burning Legion? Well, they feared the Void and were conquering entire galaxies in preparation for facing them, but so far the Void haven't really lived up to that. For me, Legion still represents peak storytelling in modern WoW. We faced an undefeatable force, there were consequences, it felt like Warcraft. I thought the previous expansion, the War Within, played a little on the safe and soft side, but I'd argue it's a bit less the case in Midnight.
It isn't over, Leandrin.
Our antagonist Xalatav is back, orchestrating the Void's assault, and without getting into spoilers, she feels less like a cosmic threat and more like an exaggerated comic book villain.
Delicious.
I feel the story's a mixed bag, bits I like, bits not so much, but where Midnight's consistently strong is the music and environments, which leads into the usual World of Warcraft leveling up experience, starting in Eversong Woods.
Please save my kitty, Mr. Paladin!
But man, Eversong is stunning, a reimagined landscape of lush golden forests and classic Blood Elf architecture, layered with light and void influences creeping in. The zone itself is pretty huge, it's the original Eversong Woods and Ghostlands combined into a single modern region. As someone who loves dark fantasy stuff, I kinda miss the darker tones from the original, especially the remnants of the Scourge invasion that have mostly been cleaned up. But returning to Windrunner Spire was a highlight. It's incredibly atmospheric, like it's been abandoned for the past 20 years, which lines up with when I was last here in the Burning Crusade. These woods are jam-packed with callbacks and references for veteran players, constant little hits of nostalgia. And while I was out gathering herbs and all, I really found myself soaking in the chimes and echoes of the ambience and atmosphere here. One major issue though, it doesn't feel like Eversong was fully designed with flying in mind. Dense tree coverage constantly gets in the way, which can be a little frustrating. But before I talk about the next region, if you love RPGs, consider subscribing to Bytes or giving the video a like. I'm a bit of an indie game developer who covers RPGs, and I'm replaying the whole Final Fantasy series while ranking them. Thank you.
Now, let's finish this.
Next you choose what order to tackle events, and I really like that we also keep checking in on the forces of light at the Sunwell who are holding the void back. We regularly check in throughout the course of the story, and Silvermoon City dynamically updates as the plot progresses, with doomsayers flocking to the streets as it feels like apocalypse now.
This is what I think of you and your light.
Not a troll zone. Those were my first thoughts when stepping foot into Zulaman, but nah, it was solid. The story was pretty good. You're acting as envoy alongside Liadrian of the Blood Knights, assisting the trolls and reuniting them with their lower gods, who were abused during the events of the Burning Crusade. Again, across the board, lots of nostalgia, lots of callbacks to an older Warcraft era. Harandar is an entirely new zone and home to the new and playable Harania race. I think visually this is a great zone, the colossal roots twisting and forming the skybox, the various lush environments, they all add texture to the zone that feels natural and brings the region to life. That said, I wasn't particularly sold on the Harania lore. The zone throws a constant stream of names, relics and historical figures at you, but very little of it actually sticks. It ends up feeling more overwhelming than engaging. I will say, every now and then the soundtrack breaks through the gameplay and just blows me away in this zone, just really adding to the immersion and atmosphere. You can also do a little campaign, Aratar's Journey, revisiting and questing in some old zones and learning about Aratar's father, Turalian. Yes, it's reusing older areas and it can disrupt the pacing, but I did appreciate seeing Turalian portrayed as he was in his Warcraft 2 days, which is over 30 years old now, which is just insane. And I quite enjoyed getting new lore and learning about the light. Blizzard are very much pushing the idea that the light isn't exactly a force of pure good, and they're not very subtle about it.
But the light cannot distinguish between love and hatred.
The final region, the Void Storm, showcases some of the Void's architecture and environment. I love the aesthetics here, the mix of pink, purple, red and blue feels distinctly unique, but I'll not talk too much about what goes on here. If I had to rank my favourite zones, without a doubt, Eversong Woods is my number one. Then I'd say Zulaman comes in second place for nostalgia. And then my third favourite might have to be Harandar. It was close, but I quite like the atmosphere and ambience. I wish these regions felt more connected on the world map. Some are isolated, which breaks immersion. I actually prefer how the War Within connected zones with tunnels that acted as secret loading screens and created the illusion of a single cohesive landmass. I also wish there were more regions. Modern expansions usually launch with 4 polished zones, and maybe add 1 or 2 later, but it still feels small compared to the scale of older expansions. These 4 zones might be higher quality than what older expansions offered, but overall it feels too compact. I do really enjoy collecting hidden treasures, lore bits and collectibles, and Midnight has plenty. Some rewards are fantastic. I found a bear mount, and there's the Crimson Dragonhawk, a really awesome reward for gathering all the floating glyphs hidden in the skies of Midnight. I also discovered these new telescopes at mountaintops which give cinematic vistas of the surrounding locations. It's a neat idea, but honestly they feel a bit cheap. They just rotate the camera around, something I could do myself, and I'd even get attacked by monsters during the cinematic. So yeah, I mentioned earlier, I mainly played my Unholy Death Knight, and it's in a really good spot in Midnight. My core abilities summon additional lesser ghouls, so you're constantly building up this horde of undead minions. I also picked up a new ability, Putrefy, which lets you raise a volatile ghoul, launch it at enemies, and have it explode for big damage. Death Knight has never had so many minions available at once, at least I think so, and it's genuinely a blast to play. It feels like I'm getting closer to playing a Necromancer in World of Warcraft, dipping into what you'd expect in ARPGs like Diablo and Path of Exile. I also spent some time on my Balance Druid, mostly for gathering herbs and all, but I did try out the Demon Hunter's brand new specialisation, Devourer. I went in with pretty low expectations. It looked more like a visual rework at first, just turning things blue with void effects, but it's actually a really unique and fun spec. It plays like a hybrid between melee and caster, bouncing between mid to close range with tons of mobility to weave in and out of combat. Being able to move while casting feels great, especially when you're collecting resource shards around you. It makes the whole playstyle feel really fluid and satisfying. Build up enough energy and you can unleash this massive void energy ball, a collapsing star that looks straight out of Dragon Ball Z. It's sick as hell. While we didn't get an entirely new class this time, Devourer is a great addition, and it definitely makes me excited to see Blizzard experiment with new specializations in the future. Across the board, all classes received an extension to their hero talents, along with a new tier called Apex talents, which have powerful game-changing effects. These sit right at the bottom of your talent tree. My only criticism is that they're very wordy. When you mouse over them, you're hit with a wall of text, and it's a lot to take in at once. You might need to take a seat in your new house and actually study these talents. Player housing is Midnight's headline feature, and to its credit, it's impressively fleshed out and well executed, though I'm not convinced it'll appeal to everyone. There's space for everyone, so you don't have to worry about losing your plot if you take a break, and I really like that you can have an entire ward or village filled with houses from your guild or friends, really bringing a bit of that sense of community back. There's tons of furniture pieces to earn through dungeons, quests, rare monsters, and achievements. And the actual building tools feel great. Placing, scaling, and rotating furniture is smooth, responsive, and feels fairly high quality. I went for a full Undead Death Knight themed house, and I've been genuinely blown away by what other players have created. People are using furniture in ways I never would have thought of, and the whole system is designed to really support that kind of creativity. I love player housing overall. It feels like a system that adds something meaningful to World of Warcraft long term, not just Midnight. That said, I do have a couple of issues. I built my house on the Alliance side, then I joined a Horde guild as an Alliance character, and I couldn't transfer my house, so I had to rebuild everything from scratch, and I'm still working on that. And then there's the cash shop. There's a pretty horrifying store for furniture, and if you want multiple copies of the same item, you have to buy them multiple times. For a subscription-based game, it doesn't sit right with me, even if there are plenty of items you can earn through gameplay.
Go now and hunt, but be careful, lest you become prey yourself.
Another smaller system added in Midnight is the Hunt system. There's a shady underground area in Silvermoon where a certain blood elf hands out bounty targets, and he's fully leaning into blood magic and all the darker elements. Honestly, this guy might be my favourite part of the whole system. He's just unapologetically evil, and it really makes me wish the game leaned back into those darker tones.
Slaughter them. Eviscerate it. Kill for me. Now!
On paper, the hunt system sounds like a throwback to old school world PvP, except you're up against NPCs instead. All that said, I've got pretty mixed feelings on it though. The idea is simple. You pick a target hiding somewhere in a zone, and while you're hunting them, they're also hunting you. At first, I really liked it. You complete normal activities in the zone to draw the target out, eventually revealing their hideout so you can go for the kill, all while they can ambush you at any time.
Can you taste their fear? I can, and it is exquisite.
It works really well because it complements things you're already doing in the world. I can see where Blizzard were going with this. But as I ranked up, I unlocked traps, and that's where things started to fall off a bit. It became about 10 times more efficient to just run around disarming traps instead of actually engaging with world content. Just grind by disarming a few traps and then kill your hunt target. The trap element itself is a cool idea, but I think the hunt system works best when it's layered into normal gameplay, like getting ambushed while fighting a rare monster, or while you're engaging a world quest. It keeps you on edge and makes the world feel more alive. It quickly starts to feel repetitive and grind heavy. Right now the hunt system feels experimental. There's a solid foundation here, but it needs refinement. So hopefully Blizzard take the best bits, improve and expand on it going forward.
All of Azeroth will come to fear the might and determination of the Blood Elves.
Delves were first introduced in the War Within, and they carry forward into Midnight. They're essentially mini dungeons designed for solo players or small groups with rotating variants. As you push into higher tiers, they can get pretty challenging, and they're a solid way to earn gear upgrades. Right now there are 10 delves, each with 3 variants, along with a weekly Nemesis super boss delve.
My hunger rises.
Delves have really grown on me over time. They act as a full endgame loop for solo players, or just complement your usual raids and dungeons. I'll talk a bit about my personal favourites.
My kind of mission.
My third favourite is Grudge Pit. It's a smaller delve, basically a chaotic fighting pit filled with mushroom monsters, but it's so tightly packed that you can get enemies to hit each other, or lure them into explosive mushrooms scattered around the environment. Second place goes to Twilight Crypts. It's a dark, claustrophobic set of troll tombs with tight corridors, maze-like layouts, and plenty of traps. It leans heavily into atmosphere, and I really like that. If you play certain classes like Demon Hunter, you can jump over the maze itself and take a big shortcut. Pretty sweet. And my personal favourite is Collegiate Calamity. It takes place right in the middle of Silvermoon City, which I just can't get enough of. It's basically a magic school gone completely wrong, unstable spells, rogue constructs, and chaos everywhere. You also get these incredible vistas overlooking Silvermoon throughout the delve, which just adds to the whole experience. Then we've got full dungeons for groups of 5 players. Midnight adds 8 new dungeons alongside 4 returning ones for Season 1, all reworked and retuned to fit modern design philosophies.
Such a shameful display. You are better off dead.
It might sound a bit cheap bringing old dungeons back, but honestly, with Pit of Sauron, I haven't run that dungeon in about 16 or 17 years, which is kind of insane to think about. So I actually welcomed its return. Same with Skyreach, which becomes really fun at higher difficulties with mechanics that just knock you straight off the platforms and into the graveyard.
What fascinating implications.
If I had to rank new dungeons, I really liked Messara Caverns. You're dealing with the Witherbark trolls, messing around with necromancy, fighting through hordes of trolls, before facing a troll hunter who's reanimated this massive eagle. You fight them both at the same time, and there's this cool mechanic where you activate the hunter's traps to catch out his pet. As you go deeper, the whole dungeon leans further into that sweet necromancy theme.
Well done, mortal.
My second favourite would be Windrunner Spire. Like I mentioned earlier, it feels like the place has been abandoned for 20 years since the Burning Crusade, and the atmosphere really sells that. It's packed with undead, very old school Warcraft vibes. There's also a great boss duo. One throws out a huge hook to pull players in, but you can bait it into hitting the other boss instead. And my personal favourite is Murder Row, and I know this one might be a bit divisive. It's set in Silvermoon City, but in the darker, shadier streets with corrupt guards, warlocks, rogues, and demons causing chaos. Again, it leans into that older Warcraft tone, which I really like. A good way through, there's even a minigame where your party runs a restaurant, playing as bouncers, waitresses, and dancers. It's completely different, but honestly, I found it way more fun than just fighting more trash monsters, but I can understand that the restaurant bit won't be for everyone. The final boss is a warlock where you use their own demonic gateways against them to dodge waves of fell energy. It's nothing new, but still a really cool mechanic. Murder isn't part of the Season 1 pool of dungeons, which is a shame, but I'm definitely looking forward to it when it gets added later on.
The way forward opens, and your fate entwines with mine.
The War Within managed to entice me, and I dipped my toes into Mythic Plus dungeons, but Midnight is where I really went all in. Basically, Mythic Plus dungeons scale in difficulty, and I had a great time pushing higher and higher levels. Highly recommend playing with friends or your guild, or you can pick up a group of strangers, but I recommend looking for groups tagged Relaxed or Learning, where it's a bit less toxic. There's a lot of trash in these dungeons, and while classic MMOs used to focus more on crowd control like freezing or putting enemies to sleep, modern WoW handles it a bit differently. Now it's all about interrupts. Enemy packs have dangerous abilities that need to be shut down, so you gotta be on your A game with interrupts and be careful not to pull too many monsters at once. And finally, the big part of WoW, the new raids. You've got the single boss raid, the Dream Rift, where you're battling Chimerius, the Undrept God. You've got the 6 boss Void Spire, where you're taking the fight to the Void. And a final separate 2 boss raid deep in spoiler territory. I've cleared the raids on normal mod and nearly done them all on heroic with my raiding guild, which has been pretty awesome, pretty fun experience. I've not guild raided in WoW since Wrath of the Lich King 17 years ago. Some highlights so far include the first 2 bosses. There's the Imperator, where the raid has to play tic-tac-toe in the battlefield itself. And Voracious is a colossal void monster looming over the raid. He puts up these void crystals you've got to destroy, so you can then get out of range of his colossal void breaths. Overall, I had a good time with Midnight's Endgame. The dungeons and raids are well put together, and on normal difficulty, most of this content can be cleared over a weekend without too much friction. The issue is what comes after that. Progression quickly settles into a familiar loop, repeating the same content at higher difficulty tiers. Personally, I don't find that especially compelling. I'd much rather see new encounters introduced as you move deeper into the endgame, additional bosses or staggered super bosses, rather than front-loading everything and scaling it upward. But it cuts both ways. They've got meaningful choice between delves, dungeons, and raids, but vertically it's far less interesting. It largely comes down to doing the same things, just harder difficulties. And that's been a consistent issue I've had with modern MMORPG design. As for the story, it's a bit of a mixed bag. I do think it's an improvement over the War Within. It feels a little less restrained, and I quite enjoyed Arator's journey, but where Midnight is consistently strong is in its environments. Each zone does a lot of the heavy lifting. While I still prefer the design philosophy of classic WoW, I did enjoy Midnight overall, especially the more arcade-like modern gameplay. Pushing Mythic plus dungeons, raiding with a guild, and mixing in solo delves, it all works well together. I'd say it lands on the more positive side of modern expansions, and probably a slight step up from the War Within. Playhousing is a fantastic addition to the core game, even if it won't appeal to everyone. Revisiting zones like Silvermoon City and Eversong Woods was genuinely jaw-dropping, and the game continues to excel in its music, environments, and attention to detail. That said, I don't think its storytelling is particularly strong. So far the Void hasn't been very threatening. Xalatav ends up feeling more like a comic book villain than a compelling threat. I don't want to talk about the finale due to spoilers, but I was a little bit disappointed. For me, Legion is probably the last time I was really into modern Warcraft storytelling. It just felt true to the Warcraft franchise. I'll definitely keep playing Midnight in the background, guild raiding, and towards the end of the expansion, I'll come back with a final review to see how it's evolved. Next up, I'll be diving back into more Final Fantasy content. In the meantime, feel free to check out my return to Dragon Age Origins, my top 10 most emotional moments in Final Fantasy, or my thoughts after 1600 hours in Guild Wars 2. Have a good one.